Welcome to the Maximus Podcast with your hosts, Bobby Maximus and Joe Sabula. And we made a terrible mistake. We screwed up. We did a podcast last episode. You can go back and listen to it. It's on the 90-10 diet, the 90-10 rule. And we wanted to make it short, sweet, and simple. We figured you don't have 3 hours to listen to a podcast. You didn't want to get into all the science. You just wanted a system of eating that you could incorporate into your life and you could do that day and it would make you better. But then came the questions. Are bananas okay? Is walnut butter okay? What about yogurt? Do I need organic milk? Is filet different than a ribeye? Joe, we got bombarded with questions on what does this actually look like on a day-to-day basis? And you would think when I said you have to be able to murder it and cook it over a fire or pluck it from a tree, that would have been enough, right? So I actually quizzed one of my people at the gym, and I said, "Have you ever seen a pizza tree?" He's like, "No." So is pizza okay to eat? He said, "No." I said, "Okay. Have you ever seen a banana tree?" "Yes." So are bananas okay to eat? He said, "Yes." I mean, so you think that would be simple enough, but apparently people have all kinds of questions, Joe.
Well, let's try to simplify this for him, because I thought we did a pretty good job, but again, the number of questions and the specific questions leave me wondering.
Talk about it. And then the other question came up is somebody asked, how do you actually put this into practice? Like, what does your day of eating look like from when you wake up to when you go to bed? And it actually got me thinking, a lot of people, there's a lot of myths out there. Should you eat breakfast? Should you not eat breakfast? Should you eat before bed? Should you not eat before bed? Do you have to have all your calories in one single sitting, like an intermittent fasting type diet? Or are you supposed to have an equal pipeline of food through the day where you're eating 2,000 calories and it's 360 calories every single meal at a certain time? So I think we can talk about both things today and just really give people a deep dive into what this looks like.
All right.
Okay. So the first thing with non-processed food, again, you have to be able to find it like it exists in nature, and you have to be able to eat it without any preparation whatsoever. That's what compromises a non-processed food.
Yeah. So let's think of it this way. If you open your refrigerator and you pull something out of the fridge and you eat it immediately, that's a non-processed something. So like an apple, or we mentioned a banana out of the produce drawer in your fridge. That's not processed. If I take that apple and I slice it up and then I grind it up and then I mix it with cinnamon and a little bit of sugar and some other stuff and I make applesauce, that's now processed.
Yeah, that doesn't count. There's no applesauce tree. The last time I checked, you can't go out to your garden or a pasture and pull a can of applesauce off of a tree.
But people, they want to twist this. They want to take so an apple's okay. So if I make like an apple fritter with like some pastry bread and a bunch of sugar and some frosting on it, well, then an apple fritter's okay, right? Like, no, the apple is okay. The donut is not okay.
Yeah,
you can't trick this system.
I do have a question though, because this is going to come up. You said I have to be able to take it out of the fridge and eat it in its natural state. What if I have a bag of Doritos in the fridge? I don't know what type of weirdo keeps Doritos in the fridge, but what if I have a bag of Doritos in the fridge? Is that eating it in its natural state?
Well, I mean, technically that would be eating a Dorito in its natural state, but its natural state is not a natural state.
Yeah, but there's no Dorito tree, is my point, right?
Yeah.
So to break it down in its most simplest form, you just have to ask yourself, could I pluck this from a garden and eat it as is with no cooking, no cutting, no preparation? I suppose the exception to that, you're allowed to peel it. Like you could peel a banana and eat it. That's you get it out of the wrapper, if you will. Would that be a fair?
The banana, I feel like a banana peel is nature's way of keeping the banana fresh until I'm ready to eat it.
Like a natural candy wrapper.
Yeah, exactly. But take something like grain. Nobody just picks grain and eats it right off the stalk, right? They have to grind. You have to process the grain to turn it into something like bread. So grain is out. So if you just have like a bunch of grass in your fridge and you're going to eat that, that's one thing. But turning that grass into a bread and then eating the bread. That's a processed food.
Yep. Again,
there's a lot of foods that fall into that. An orange, yes, you have to peel the orange. A banana, yes, you have to peel the banana. But most vegetables, you just wash them and eat it.
Yeah.
Because you just, you don't want to eat the dirt.
And so even though it comes from the earth and it's growing naturally, it doesn't mean that you can just eat it. You have to be able to eat it without preparation. Like your example of, theoretically, like with bread, I suppose that olive oil is somewhat comes from the earth, or whatever oil you use. I suppose that wheat somewhat comes from the earth, and it's cane sugar somewhat comes from the earth. But you can't just walk up to the plant and eat it. So no, it's not, you're not allowed it. So when we talk about the 90-10 rule, 90% of your diet, Joe, you're eating like very plain meat, and you're eating essentially raw vegetables and raw fruits.
Yeah.
Because I would say if you have to cook it as a vegetable, it goes into the processing, the processed category.
I would categorize it as suspect at best.
Yes.
Some stuff, you can make an argument, right? Because you do have to cook meat, but like you also would have to cook a potato. But I would say you got to look at this as a very high level. There is no processing. Like you said, everything is basically raw. This is like a raw, almost a vegan style of approaching food. And then there's less desirable choices that you can make based off of that. But a lot of that depends on where you're at, what your specific goals are, how much wiggle room you're willing to give yourself, how immediate your goals are. If you're trying to cut weight fast, like you have no wiggle room at all. You can't have that one chip to just satiate the need for it. There's no room at all. You can't choose the potato over the less processed vegetables because there's no wiggle room at all. So it kind of depends.
Let me ask you a question, because we were talking about raw meat. You can get beef tartare. That's a raw beef.
Yeah.
You can get carpaccio, which is raw beef. Now, it has to be super high quality. But on a grade, Joe, and I'm going to give you two examples. Would you rather have a really high quality beef tartare, raw red meat, super high quality, or would you rather have like a super high quality ribeye that's been burned to a crisp? Which one? Like honestly, which one has the better protein? Which one? I'm going to say if you can get it raw, get it raw. And I would also say that some sashimi, like if you had some hamachi crudo or like a raw fish, like from a really good sushi restaurant, that's probably better than throwing your salmon on the barbecue. Like I think there is an argument in the denaturing of protein, the cooking stuff to death. People say meat can be carcinogenic. I don't think it's the meat. I think it's the fact that you cook it over a grill and you're eating all those little burnt ends off the steak that cause the problem. And so, theoretically, in a perfect world, raw is better. Now, that's not
most of nature eats their meat raw. Only humans cook, right?
So, again, I don't know if I would want to get into eating raw pork and stuff like that, but I think there is an argument that sashimi is probably better than cooked salmon. That tartare is probably better than a cooked steak. So, as close as you can get as possible to this, that's how you want to eat your 90%. And then the 10%, again, you're allowed to cheat a little bit. But all those things that you're eating had better still come from nature.
Yeah.
And again, the license.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. And we talked about this a little bit last time too, because the specific starting place that you're at, where your particular goal is going to also dictate how fast you're going to make that change, how strict you have to be on all of that. But you've got to understand it's always strict. Yep. There isn't, again, there's no room for an Oreo cookie on this diet. There just isn't any room for it.
Oh, and the only reason you would want to eat that is for fun anyway, or you really want to treat, and that shouldn't be an everyday thing. So I think I'd like to actually go through like a day and talk about what foods are okay and not okay. So let's talk about common breakfast foods, right? Because food is, the way I explain food to people is there's a huge cultural envelope or a huge cultural umbrella over food. Like in general, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's not normal to eat sushi for breakfast.
Right.
People don't, wake up at 8 o'clock and be like, I want a plate of sushi, right? There are breakfast foods.
Mm-hmm.
So eggs, completely.
Eggs are great.
From nature. You can crack open an egg and you can drink a raw egg. You're fine with eggs. Eggs are a good choice. Any red berries, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, blueberries, great choices. If you want to make an omelet, I'm okay with spinach. I'm okay with arugula. I'm okay with a little bit of avocado. Those are all really good choices for breakfast. And frankly, traditional breakfast choices.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that those all have in common is they also have a really high nutrient density. Like when you look at what's in an avocado, the amount of potassium, when you look at things like vitamin A, vitamin C, all those things, you're eating really nutrient dense food. I'm okay with a handful of nuts. Again, nutrient dense, but I do want to warn people, nuts are a great source of nutrients. Nuts are a great source of healthy fat. They're not a great source of protein. The protein per calories that you're going to get, they are not great. And cheese falls in the same category, Joe.
Yeah.
You can't tell me you're adding cheese because you want protein. Like it's not worth the bang for your buck calorie-wise. But cheese and nuts, I would still look at it as a somewhat nutrient-dense food.
Well, so like even take like butter. Butter is very nutrient dense. Yes. I mean, it's just fat, right? But that's why bacon, like a pound of bacon has like what, 3,500 calories. It's like, I mean, it's a ton. And a pound of strawberries has 150 calories.
Yeah, it's not the bang for your buck, right? Strawberries do. So those are breakfast foods. I would say if you're looking at a breakfast, those are things that are on the approved menu. Then you have what I call the mid-grade choices, Joe. The stuff that falls into the 10%, but may or may not be the greatest choice, like overnight oats.
Right.
Because oats are great for calories. Like if you're really trying to bulk up, you're really trying to get some carbohydrates in, maybe oats are your choice. But if you were to stack up what's actually in an avocado from a nutritional standpoint and what's in oats, oats are fairly empty. Like they're a fairly empty food. They're not bad. Oats are, generally from nature. They take some processing to create, but it's empty calories from a nutritional standpoint. It's just carbohydrates.
Well, there's nothing specific that oats or grains bring to your diet that you can't get from other sources.
That you have to have.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if I took meat away from you completely, you would feel the effects in terms of brain function, recovery, sexual function, energy, all those things. If I took oats away from you, I don't think you'd notice a difference apart from there is if you go 100% carb free. I'm not necessarily an advocate of that. But if you do a low carb diet, you've been used to high carb, you will feel an energy lag for 3 to 4 weeks. You'll get over it though. But you will feel it for a few weeks. You'll feel low. I've had a bunch of people, Joe, where I have them under 150 grams of carbohydrates a day, and they have a miserable time for 3 weeks, and then they turn the corner, and they're absolutely 100% fine.
Yeah, it's common. Yep.
Keep in mind, we're also talking about health versus performance here. If you're a high-level athlete and you're working out 4 hours a day, a low-carb diet's probably not for you. And there are some nutritional specifics. It's funny. My wife and I talk about this, but she prefers a lower fat, higher carbohydrate diet. That fuels her better, right? Some people prefer a higher fat, lower carbohydrate diet.
Yeah, even within the same world, because your wife is a massive power lifter.
Yep.
So like she needs like absolute power, and so I can understand like her muscles just want that carbohydrate just to fuel what she's trying to do, and she's not a big person. No. So for her strength to weight ratio is really, really important. She's trying to squeeze every ounce of performance out of every ounce of muscle that she has.
And let's not confuse performance again with health.
Right.
I would argue if you're trying to perform, you're not worried about health anymore. There was a quote I remember where after a Tour de France, a cyclist, he wanted a Coca-Cola. And they asked his coach, like, really? Like that's however he can get sugar in, that's how he's going to get it in at this point. Like getting that sugar in is more important than not. So we got the good breakfast choices, right? The avocado, the egg, the berries, the nuts, the greens. That's what I want you to choose for breakfast. The mid-grade choice would be that overnight oats, but I don't want the oats by themselves.
Right.
You should still have every single meal you have, there should be some nutrient density. Like have a banana with it, have some berries with it, have some real maple syrup for the amino acids in it. Don't have the processed corn syrup that people put that you get served at IHOP. You want the real maple syrup. And then I'd say the last choice, Joe, would be the deep fried stuff, the pancakes, the dessert for breakfast, the buckets of Nutella.
And let's be clear. Most breakfast choices, especially in the Americas, are dessert. Yeah. Pancakes are a dessert. Waffles are a dessert.
Cereal?
Any pastries, cereals it's all sugar. It's all
cereal.
Dessert.
I put that in the candy category. Let's call it what it is. Now, are there some cereals that are real granola and real dried fruit and real? Yes, but like I'm not filling my face with Honey Nut Cheerios and pretending. That's a choice that you make when you have nothing else to eat.
Yeah.
It's the zombie apocalypse.
I was just going to say that. It's the end of the world. You're at the grocery store.
So that's breakfast. And the more you can eat the nutrient dense stuff, and I'll put this to you. If you come over, we have a 3-egg omelet with a little bit of farm fresh sausage, some avocado, like a homemade hot sauce.
You're making me hungry.
Berries on the side. You're not going to be suffering.
No.
Does it take a bit of work to make that? Sure. But you're not suffering. And you can't tell me that is less enjoyable than a bowl of Cheerios.
Right.
That's like a restaurant style dish. And if you have to have a tortilla handmade to choke it down, great. But the tortilla is your 10%. You've got the 90% in the other stuff. I just hope that tortilla is just made from corn and water or flour and water.
It's as good as you can get it. And yes, it's going to take effort to prepare meals following these rules, but it is worth the effort. Number one, because you're going to spend more energy actually preparing the food you're eating. So like just from an energy balance standpoint, you're burning more calories to eat less calories, right? Yes. And then secondly, like you're saying, it's better food. It's a better experience. I'd much rather have a Bobby Maximus homemade omelet than going over to whatever restaurant here in town, whatever cafe, and just getting something that they just threw together with frozen ingredients.
When we talk about effort though, Joe, and I just watched my wife, we actually just had lunch before the podcast. I had some ribs. She actually made a scramble. She did some Wagyu ground beef. She did some eggs. She did a little bit of potato. Again, she's trying to get the carbs in for performance. A little bit of avocado. I think it took her like 7 minutes to cook this or 8 minutes to cook this. So my next question is, yes, it takes a little bit of effort. And if you were to break it down into a whole bunch of, I guess, micro jobs, did she have to get the ground beef out of the package? Did she have to crack the egg? Did she have to? It seems like a lot of work. But in reality, it was 7 to 9 minutes.
Yeah.
So forget how much effort you think this is with all the individual things. You don't have 7 to 9 minutes to make.
No, because I just want to eat out of a bag that's just tied around my head, Bobby. I don't want to think about what's going in my body. I don't want to be responsible for the choices that I make. It's just easier for me to crack open a box of Lucky Charms and go face first than it is to stop, make some food, and really enjoy it.
But it's 7 to 9 minutes. And that was with her cooking the ground beef like fresh.
Yeah.
You could have easily spent 3 hours in the afternoon yesterday or an hour or whatever it is cooking a bunch of ground beef in a container and then using it for the week. Like that's why people do meal prep.
Yeah.
So we've covered off breakfast, right? Then we have, I'm not going to include snacks because I don't believe in snacks. I look at all my meals as just feedings. So you can have breakfast food for a snack. A snack doesn't mean a granola bar and a yogurt. A snack doesn't mean a candy or a protein bar or a shake. Like a snack is nothing more than a feeding.
Yep.
So now traditional lunch foods, chicken breast, chicken thighs, red meat, like a filet, a sirloin, a New York, a ribeye. Ribeye, you might have to watch calories because it's a little higher in fat, but that's fine. Some sushi, some sashimi. I'd rank sashimi higher than sushi because it doesn't have the rice along with it, right? And I'm actually shocked at how much rice people can shuttle down with their sushi, but you could have that. And then on the side, have your pick of whatever vegetable you want.
Mm-hmm.
Dark leafy greens are better than lighter greens, right? Like you're better off having spinach and iceberg lettuce from a nutritional standpoint.
Yep.
So dark leafy greens, berries, and I'm going to say there's no real vegetable that's off limits. Like you can have carrots, you can have tomatoes, you can have broccoli, you can have cauliflower, you can have kale, you can have, like, there's a whole host of stuff that you can have.
Yeah, and veggies are pretty easy for the most part, and especially when you realize that frozen veggies are the best bet. Yeah. Because they're picked from the plant and they're flash frozen right then and there, so there's no nutrient degradation. Versus having them all thrown in the back of a truck and then shipped for 2 weeks across the country to get to your grocery store. So throwing a bag of steamable vegetables in the microwave and boom, like you're good to go.
Well, and they have all kinds of stuff like this. Like we're Costco shoppers, but they have these little shake packs with there's blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, kale, like a little bit of avocado, like whatever. And you just, yes, it's from a package, but it's natural. Like don't take that literally, because the reality is when we say pluck it from a tree or a plant, you probably, I'm looking out my window right now, but like you don't have 5 acres of veggies that you're going to pick from, right? So those are the
that's actually a really good thought experiment. I mean, just imagine that you lived like on a deserted island somewhere that had like pigs and chicken running around, and that there were, fruit trees. They had orange trees and pineapple trees and banana trees. And it was like, well, I'm hungry. What would you do? You'd like go in the backyard and like, I don't know, pick a mango off a tree, and that's what you would eat. You wouldn't plant a field, grow a bunch of wheat, plant another field with a bunch of oats, take all of that stuff in, and then try to make some kind of like a granola bar out of it and then eat that. You know what I mean? That's like, it's not worth the effort. It's too much processing. It's too much energy when that fruit is right there. And if you wanted meat, you got pigs, you got chicken, you're going to have to catch one. You're going to have to process it, right? You're going to have to butcher it. You're going to have to do all this stuff, but that's going to be some fresh, clean meat. It's not something that was made in a factory.
No. And don't feel afraid if you're listening to this to step out of the cultural boundaries that have been imposed on you. And I have an example from last night. Hunter wanted chicken. And what did he want for a side dish? Citrus oranges. And like my first thought was like, you little weirdo. Like you need carrots. But what's wrong with pairing orange with chicken? What's wrong with, if I had some ribs at lunch, what's wrong with having a handful of red berries on the side? Like the things don't necessarily, I think we're a victim, Joe, of society where if you have a steak, you have to have potatoes with it.
Yeah.
Why and who said? Right? If you have chicken, you have to have this. When you go for barbecue, you have to have cornbread and you have to have mac and cheese. That's not necessarily true. You can eat, food is fuel. You can eat whatever you want, whether it seems paired the right way or it's weird. Like that's 100% your choice. But I know people that fall victim to, I can't have a sandwich without bread. Why couldn't you have a plate of just really quality meat? Why do you have to have because you've been taught that that's the way it is. Why do you have, in my family growing up, it was spaghetti every Sunday night. Well, do we have to eat this, or is this just what we've done? Why do you have to have dessert? Because it's something you've done. Why do you need the bedtime snack?
Yeah.
So for lunch, we have your high grade choices. Mid grade choices to me are sweet potato, plain rice, like something that's from the earth.
Consider those filler. You know what I mean? Those are just filler. They're not, you're not eating, rice because you're getting some amazing amount of nutrients from it. It's just filling you up.
And then you got the bad choices. Fast food, deep fried, chips. Like if you never ate a chip again, you'd be better off. And I eat chips sometimes, but if you never ate a chip again, you'd be better off. And then dinner's pretty much a clone of lunch.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's a little more rich. Maybe you put a little bit more time into it. Maybe it's a little bit more sit downy. You're not on the go. But let me tell you, what's wrong with a pot roast? Like if you have a hard time preparing food and it's really inexpensive, go get yourself some chuck roast, put it in a pot with a little bit of chicken stock or beef broth, throw some carrots in there, maybe a little bit of sweet potato, cook it for 8 hours. Like, you are a happy person.
Yeah. You're making me hungry today, but I haven't eaten lunch yet.
Yeah. Throw some spinach in there. Like, do what you got to do. And that's your meal. And again, the stuff for dinner that you don't want is that frozen pizza from Costco. Those wings, that fast food stuff. And so basically that's how I eat all the time, Joe. Like, in a perfect world, that's what you'd have. The question people have a lot is, what about supplements? For me, and this may be counterintuitive, supplements fall into the 10% category.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
I will always rank, and listen, I support supplements. I think sometimes to hit your protein goals, you need them. But I will always rank an egg over protein powder. I will always rank a steak over protein powder. I will always rank chicken over protein powder if you have a choice.
Yeah, and I think the choice is important because, again, that goes back to what your specific goals are. If you're trying to eat 200 grams of protein a day, that's a lot of eggs. And if I'm trying to keep my calories low at the same time, but the protein high, man, protein powder is just too easy. It's too easy to pass up. Like, that's how you get those numbers up. So again, in a perfect world, I will choose the natural food source for the bulk of all of the nutrients that I need. And then a supplement, I think that fits in that 10% of it gets you to that goal. It's a useful tool that you have access to.
This leads into our talk about our morning routines and about how, eating plays a role in that. So to give you an example of my morning routine, I'm just going to hijack the podcast and go first, but I wake up without an alarm clock. Sometimes it's 6 a.m. Sometimes it's 7:10, but I wake up. I start my day at 8 o'clock at the gym where I train other people and train myself. I choose to have the fake meal in the morning, the protein and the vitamins and the reds and the greens and the fish oil, because it doesn't fill me up. It doesn't weigh me down. I'm a creature of habit. If I wake up at 7:10, I still have time to do it because it instantly mixes together. Now, I'm using super high quality, low temperature processed protein, not stuff at Costco that's $9.99 for 30 pounds. I'm using a really high end organic coffee. If it's milk in there, it's raw milk. My reds and greens are not cheap, Joe. Like, we're looking at $65 a month. I'm using the best of the best. I'm using the highest quality fish oil. Like, I still use that thought process for the 90%. But the reason I don't have a real breakfast is because if I sit down and make a big meal, it pushes my day back to 9. Pushes my day. Now, in a perfect world, that's what I do. But that's not the world I live in, to hit the gym and hit jujitsu and do my podcast and to do work and to do. That's the choice that I've made. But what I don't do is if I wake up on a Saturday and I don't have that, or if I have 5 hours home in the afternoon, I'm not just having a shake because I'm too lazy to make something else.
Right. Yeah.
That's where I have an issue where people are just like, oh, I'll have protein because I'm lazy. No, have the protein if you can't stomach food in the morning. Have the protein if you're in a hurry. Have the protein. But if it's a regular Saturday afternoon, don't be making like pre-made shakes all the time or drinking pre-made shakes because you think you need to. That's when I'd rather you have the real food.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and think about how many people, they drive past a gas station every morning and it's like, well, I better stop in and get my, gas station egg and cheese sandwich for breakfast because I didn't have time to make anything at home. Like, you're not going to die between now and lunch, guys.
Because even though it's processed, that's cleaner than the gas station egg. Like, if I do a handful of fish oil, a really good shake, and some reds and greens, that is much cleaner than that stuff you'll get at the gas station.
Yeah.
Even though it's in that 10%, because we're not saying the 10% is cheating. The 10% is not bad. If you follow this 90-10 thing, I mean, I would argue the way we're breaking it down, you could eat only 10% for your whole diet, and it's probably better than you're eating right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like,
for the vast majority of people, yeah.
We're not including cheating in that. So even though that shake, and by the way, if it's high quality, it's good. Now, the other reason I do that is because a big meal in the morning bogs me down, Joe.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't eat a huge lunch before this podcast because I wouldn't be able to think. I wouldn't be able to talk.
Right. So I mentioned I haven't eaten it. It's the same thing. Like, I need to be sharp. I don't want to be half falling asleep. Yeah.
I eat light, but it's all nutrient dense stuff. It's my reds, it's my greens, it's my fish oil. I had a little bit of meat for lunch. When I actually eat, I'll eat at night.
Right. Yeah. The big meal is the last meal for me.
Go. Now I want to mention one other thing for more of the people that were in our shoes, we'll call it 15 years ago. When I was a cop and you were a corrections officer, when we were working overtime, when we would work 12-hour shifts and not get home, I actually did it the opposite way around. Breakfast would be my most important meal of the day, and sometimes the only real food that I would eat, because I was at home. I would wake up out of my own bed, and it was the one meal a day that I could guarantee if I got stuck on overtime, if I got stuck in a cruiser, if the world went to, I could control that meal. So generally what you'd see with me back then was a really good breakfast. And if I was not working all kinds of hours of overtime and dead tired when I got home, a good meal before bed, and then everything else was like snacky. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was a corrections officer, it's the same thing. We use the phrase eat tactically. Now, I think of all of the prison guards that I worked with, I think I'm probably the only one who ever actually did. But for me, that meant exactly that. The only thing that I had control over, the only thing I could count on was that breakfast meal before shift. Whether I'm coming off a double or whether I'm just going on a normal shift, like after a weekend, and I'm worried that I might get jammed that day. And especially when you're a rookie, you're going to get jammed in an institution all the time. But the meals that we got throughout the day were the meals that they feed the inmates. And prison food, especially the institution that I was at, was very, very rich. And so the idea was that, a bunch of people with a bunch of heavy, rich food in their stomach are going to be more placid. They're going to tend to be overweight, less fit, easier to control. But when I look around and I'm looking at all my coworkers and I'm seeing guys that are bigger around than they are tall.
Yes.
Right. I'm seeing chairs, like they got these office chairs that are rigged so that you can't sit up in them. You have to lay back so your gut can hang out over your pants. It's like, that's part of why. Yeah. So for me, it was like the only meal that I could absolutely count on having control over was that first meal. And I had to make sure it was enough because I knew I was going to be eating like a bird throughout my shift.
Yep. And by the way, that eating like a bird, there is a thing called the warrior diet where you just graze throughout the day. Like as if you were a warrior, you were foraging, right? You have a little bit of nuts, a little bit of berries. You never keep your stomach full. So you can constantly think. You can constantly
and again, that phrase, eat tactically, because if it was in being in law enforcement, being in an institution, if there was a riot, I don't want to be the guy who just ate a 2,000 calorie meal.
And at the end of the day, when you're safe, when you can go to bed, that's when you can sit down and have your big steak.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's another reason why I eat light throughout the day. Because the minute what you said, the minute I have that 2,000 calorie lunch, I'm done. Like my biggest meal is at the end of the day, usually, because then I can shut off. But I'm not eating and then having a tactical conversation with somebody or a business. Like I want to, Joe, if I have a big meal, I want to fall asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
Right. So
and my day starts very similar to yours, where I'll get up, no alarm clock. I do not like setting an alarm. I got, 2 kids in school, so that's my alarm clock if I ever try to sleep late. But I'm usually up first. And I'm downstairs, and the only thing I have a supplement routine in the morning, which is like a multivitamin. I've got an allergy pill that I take. I'll do my fish oil, and I'll make a cappuccino.
Yeah.
And I make it myself. And that is pretty much all I'll have until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Now, if I'm training in the morning, which is most mornings, I usually prioritize my endurance training. So that's my time to go for a run, to do the long, like steady, the high calorie burn, if you will. And if I'm really feeling run down after that, that's where a protein shake is good. A little creatine, a scoop of protein. I even put salt in it. And that is enough to tide me over until, like I said, late in the afternoon.
I'm going to cut you off. I'm horribly confused.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you have to eat before breakfast? What about muscle glycogen? What about fueling your muscles for recovery? Like I'm generally, like these are things that are thrown at us all the time. I'm confused. How are you able to even walk up the stairs without replenishing your carbohydrates after a workout?
It's the funniest thing to me because what happens when you're sleeping all night long? What is your body doing except topping off all your glycogen stores?
Yeah.
Like you wake up with all the glycogen that you need for the day. And that's why I think the big meal at the end of the day, it's not that I burn energy, and then I have a meal and put all that energy back. What I'm eating at night is fueling my next day.
Yeah.
So if I know I'm going to get up early and go for a run, I'd rather have that meal late, have all that energy in my system, right? Be able to sleep, wake up, and be energized and ready to rock. And when I come back, like, again, what's your goal? If my goal is to put on weight, then yeah, I'm going to have that post-workout shake every time. I'm going to hit those carbs, right? The super carbs. I need my super starches. I'm going to need my protein because I'm trying to encourage my body to stay anabolic. If I'm trying to cut weight, what do I need a post-workout shake for?
Yep.
It's just extra calories at that point.
So I got my calculator. I want to
do a little
math, right? Okay, so we got, let me see here. An average human, before you get all excited, I'm going to stop you right there. You are an average human. You're not the unique snowflake. You're not the 1 in a billion. You weren't given the super serum that Captain America got. You are 100% an average human. Let's get that straight right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not elite. You're not out. You're your average. Okay. The average human has 1,600 calories of muscle glycogen on board at any time that's available to them. So we're going to start with 1,600.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the gym and work out. And I want to remind you, you're an average human. You're not burning 5,000 calories in a workout. You're not burning 4,000. You have not seen a workout where you burned 1,000. I mean, maybe there are some high-level CrossFitters and some Olympic athletes and some NBA athletes that are watching this podcast, but chances are you're not burning 1,000 in a workout.
Yeah.
So you ate Friday night. You wake up Saturday morning. You go work out on an empty stomach. You got 1,600 calories to burn in your system to fuel that workout. Even if you went crazy, did an hour of the hardest intervals the world has ever seen. And I'm going to prove this to you. You don't believe me. You're getting all in your feelings. You're getting upset. He doesn't know me. Okay. Go get a Concept 2 rowing machine at your local gym and try 1,000 calories for time.
Oh, God.
Tell me how you feel. That's what 1,000 calories looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot harder than you think. But let's say you burn 1,000 calories. So 1,600 minus 1,000. You still have 600 on board.
Yeah.
And you're probably not working out because you're probably not doing 2-a-days.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not. When I tell people to do 2-a-days, you're overtraining. You're insane. You're obsessed. Who hurt you when you were a kid? This is what I get. Okay. So you still have 600 left over, Joe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, theoretically, you have enough on board that you don't have to eat for 2 days, and that would probably cover all your workout needs. Because workout.
I'll push back and I'll say 1,600 is probably on the light end. Like I'm talking about me. I'm 230 pounds and very muscular. I might have more.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you're average, right? Like
but my point being is like, if I wanted to do 2 a day, I'm big enough that I probably have plenty on board.
I know you did 3 sets of 10 bench press, you did 3 sets of 10 pec deck, and you did 3 sets of 10 cable crossovers, and you think because you're pumped, you burned all the calories. That's probably a 250 calorie workout.
Yeah.
Like really, like unless you're doing really, I mean, like for me, the 1,000 calorie workouts, Joe, are where I'm wringing out my shirt from sweat.
Yeah.
If my shirt's dry, I didn't burn 500 calories.
Yeah. Well, and think too about, because you mentioned like being an elite CrossFitter. Yep. A CrossFit style workout that burns 1,000 calories is fatal to most people.
Yes. Yeah. You're not doing that, right? Like you're not doing the volume. If you want to know, again, what 1,000 calories is, try to do 1,000 calories for time on a treadmill or a Concept 2 and even those things are tuned a little higher. Like it spits out more calories and you're probably actually burning and you're probably more efficient than you think you are. But the point stands, you can work out on an empty stomach. That's not a problem. And you probably don't need to fuel right after. A high level athlete, yes. The Michael Phelps that's swimming for 5 hours straight, absolutely. Your Tour de France rider, absolutely. Maybe a 2-hour hard NBA practice, absolutely. When you got to come and turn around and do it again at night.
Well, and there's something that we talk about in seminars all the time, which is a lot of the rules of fitness become more true the more fit you are.
Yes.
So that means for someone like a LeBron James or a Michael Phelps, who's at the top of their game, all of that science, all of that, post-workout, managing your glycogen levels, all of that is very, very true and has to be very, very dialed in.
Yep.
For the average person, a lot more wiggle room.
Yeah. And again, so you don't need to eat in the morning. You have enough on board. If you feel like you're lagging, that's psychological.
Yeah.
Have some coffee, have a little bit of caffeine. That is 100%. It's kind of like the bedtime snack. I can't sleep without a bedtime snack. That's not true. You've been conditioned since you were a child to get the bedtime snack, and that's your safety blanket. But there's nothing about eating before bed that helps you sleep better. So let's get that straight. If anything, you don't want to eat before bed because you're giving your body a job and you're probably not going to be in as deep of a sleep.
Yeah.
But in the morning, you probably don't need to eat. In fact, you don't. You're good. And if you're trying to get calories in, you're looking at, again, my wife who's like 3% body fat, who's trying to get in the lowest weight class possible that she really needs to fuel herself. Most of you don't need to worry. You could do with some less calories. Like when I go to Walmart, when I go to Target, when I go to Costco, and I'm watching people walking around just eating all the free samples. You can do with a few less and by a few, I mean a fuck ton. You can do with some less calories.
Yeah, there is a very human fear of starving to death. People will be like, oh, I haven't had lunch, I'm going to die. Like, you can go about 3 weeks without eating. So like missing a meal now and then is not the worst thing that you can do, especially if you're trying to be smaller.
Yeah.
Right.
So my guilty pleasure, Joe, it's a little show called Naked and Afraid.
Sure.
And I love it because it gives stats.
Yeah.
If you're unfamiliar with the show, they basically take a man and a woman. They take all your clothes and they drop
everything
you naked and afraid into the woods, and you got to figure it out. And sometimes they're lucky enough to kill a lizard or a snake or some type of little ground rodent. Some people are really good at hunting and they kill like an antelope or like a impala. And they're eating good for a few days.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, and by the way, they've done 21-day challenges. There's 30-day challenges. They have Naked and Afraid XL, which is like 60 days. A, people survive. B, people are able to do stuff. Like there's challenges. They got to walk tremendous distances and they got to build their shelter. And they're not just laying still. So they're actually doing some real work. And they don't have agriculture. Like the odd time they happen on some berries or some mushrooms or like something they can forage for, Joe. But they're not eating plates of spaghetti and rice and all these things. And they're all fine.
Yeah, well, and they're not getting 3 squares a day either, right? Like they're eating what's available when it's available, and they might have to go days without eating. Yeah.
It seems to me that like sleeping with the bugs is a way bigger issue or getting sunburned than the actual food they're taking in. So they show the stats, and over the course of 21 days, somebody loses 20 pounds. It's like it's like the best way to do a transformation because you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? But like this happens. And it's funny, the people that go in kind of fat and then are lean by the end.
Yeah.
But they're not dead. So you're not going to tank your whole existence. You're not going to fall apart. You're not going to die because you didn't stick a pancake in your mouth for breakfast. You're going to be, and again, a lot of you need less calories.
Well, we talked about in the last episode, if you're on a 500 calorie deficit, which isn't huge, it's very doable, 210 days.
Yep.
Right? Do you need to be on 1,000 calorie deficit? Do you need to be on a 1,500 calorie deficit? Like, probably not. Like, just be patient. And you don't have to like starve yourself. But if you just drop the pancakes in the morning, how many calories are you cutting out of your day?
1,000? 1,200?
So, I mean, there's some really, really easy ways to just make that deficit appear.
Yep. Well, and Joe, I would say this too. Some of y'all need a bigger deficit. Some of you need a smaller deficit, right? But the last thing I want to say in this podcast is just about that routine. Stop thinking you have to eat every meal. Stop thinking you have to hit a certain number of calories. Stop thinking you have to restrict a certain amount. Like, really, you got to do what works for you.
Yeah.
And if it's skipping lunch, it's skipping lunch. If that's the way you got to cut your calories, great. If it's eating breakfast,
go on the 2 meals a day diet until you hit your goal.
And oftentimes I say the best diet is the one that works for you. And when you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, you're doomed to failure. You got to do, it's the intermittent fasting thing, right? So just quick, I don't want to get all into this, but intermittent fasting, there's different eating windows, different fasting windows. But the traditional is a 4-hour feeding window and a 20-hour fast. If you're single, you can do that whenever you want. The morning, the mid-afternoon, the night, it doesn't matter. You're pretty good. You have 3 kids and culturally you value family dinner. Oh, you'd better have your eating window around dinner. Like so there's not sure, maybe there's an optimal time to do this stuff, but you have to do what works for you. If you know that you're having a family dinner, and I used to do this, Joe, when I would go over to my Italian grandmother's house, my Nonna, when I would go over there Sunday night for dinner, that woman does not take no for an answer. You eat what she puts on your plate.
Yeah.
That's your choice. If it's spaghetti, it's spaghetti. It's veal parmigiana, it's veal parmigiana. Like, you have no choice. Otherwise, you're getting hit with an electrical cord or a pan or a wooden spoon or something else. Even as a grown man, you want to disrespect me, Roberto? You're done. You're dead to me. Okay. I knew as a big boy going over there Sunday that I didn't have a lot of control over what I was going to eat because I didn't want to disappoint my grandmother. I didn't eat the pancakes for breakfast. I didn't go out for brunch on Sunday. I didn't just have a bag of Doritos for lunch on Sunday afternoon because it was Sunday and it was my cheat day and I couldn't help myself. And no, I would do the warrior thing where I'm going to save it up for tonight. I'm going to graze. I'm going to graze. I'm going to graze. And then if I have a little bit more for dinner than I want to have, it's going to even itself out. If I know I'm going to cheat at dinner, I'm going to eat healthier at lunch. You're not stop putting yourself into these things where I have to have cereal for breakfast because Count Chocula is what we always had as kids. And that's what I'm having. And then I have to have a snack, and a snack has to be these 5 foods. That snack food's probably not great for you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that thinking sets you up for failure too, because when you're like, everything has to be perfect, and then something, again, out of your control happens and you don't get that one thing, now all bets are off. And then it's just, you're off to the races eating whatever you can find. You're in survival mode again, because you're panicking because you missed a meal or what have you. You've got to have the wherewithal and the ability to adapt this thing to your life.
You don't have to do it. I would argue that 9 out of 10 Americans, 9 out of 10 Canadians, 9 out of 10 English people, they woke up and there was leftover steak in the fridge or a bowl of porridge. They would choose the porridge because you don't eat steak for breakfast. Porridge is the thing that you eat. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Why? What's wrong with having a little bit of leftover steak? What's wrong with having a burger patty?
Well, this is a cultural experience that I had when I lived in Korea. It's like I go with my master. I'm there studying martial arts, and we're going out for breakfast. And it's like you get this like pan fried fish with these vegetables, and I'm like, this looks like a dinner. This doesn't look like breakfast to me. But they don't have this notion that there's certain foods for breakfast. It's just another meal. Like, what do you need? And then you start thinking about it, and it's like, I would have like, the salmon and the vegetables and a side salad for dinner. I would never have that for breakfast. Well, why not?
Why not? So get out of and that's why my morning routine has become, I don't eat heavy in the morning. I have that little shake, the reds and the greens, and I'm gone. And then I work out, and then I do my jujitsu, and then I come home and I have a super light lunch, and then I work. And dude, I'm as fit as anybody on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like you'll never hear me say at 8 o'clock in the morning, oh God, I wish I had a bag of potatoes or a stack of pancakes because I can't work out hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always the guy who's got a 30-pound gut, who has erectile dysfunction, who's red in the face. He's got high blood pressure. He's got bad skin. He's got all the things. That's the guy that will look you in the eye and tell you, I can't work out on an empty stomach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
It's the 300-pound shot putter who needs that carb refeed before the next day's competition. It's like, dude, you're going to throw 6 times.
Yeah.
You've got enough on board. You're good.
And that was my point earlier about the average person. Like, again, you could probably do with skipping breakfast. You know, and it goes back to the other thing, Joe. What's the best way to lose weight? Skip 1 meal a day.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way to gain weight? Add a meal a day. Like, it's literally that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. But people like to overthink things, and they like to think like we started this off with, everybody's a special case.
Yep.
Everybody's unique. My genetics, whatever, right? Just accept that doesn't necessarily apply. And again, with this 90-10 stuff, the fitter you are, the closer you are to your goals, the more true it becomes. Yep. So you've got to stay in there and you've got to keep it really focused. And that's why it's 90. That's why it's not 80. It's not 70. It's 90, because 90% of it has to be that tight. And that other 10% ain't loose. Well, it's just slightly less tight.
Our 10% is probably better than your diet.
Yeah.
Let's get that straight. Like, we're not counting that 10%. We have cheats on a whole nother island. Cheats are a whole nother world. Like, there's no room in the 90-10 diet for the Coca-Cola, the Pepsi, the Mountain Dew, the Gatorade, the Doritos, the Oreos, the ice cream, the sheet cake, the muffins, the cookies. Like, those don't exist in that world. That's it. So hopefully that clarifies some of your questions. As a breakdown, you're basically going to live off steak, chicken, eggs, bone broth, arugula, spinach, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries. I would have said blackberries, by the way, or I would have said just eat red berries. But then people are like, well, what about blueberries? They're not red. Okay, so you can have berries, you can have banana, you can have avocado, and you can have some nuts. There's your diet.
I always simplify: meat and vegetables, have some nuts. What else do you need?
Yeah.
Like nothing else has to be on there.
And fruit's not going to make you fat. I am so sick and tired of this. I can sit down a Diet Coke and a vodka every Friday night, but I don't want to eat the blueberries. They're going to make me.
Well, I mean, there is a great argument of like, fruit isn't, it's not the same when you buy it at a grocery store as if you were to be growing it in your own garden, for sure. Like the vegetables are not going to be as nutrient dense. The difference between like all of the apples that you buy now, they're very much bred to sell. They are sugar. Yeah. So I get that. Still better than a candy bar.
Do me
way
a favor,
better
Joe,
than a candy bar.
Do a thought experiment for me.
Sure.
There's a person that I know. You don't know this person. They exercise every day. They sleep 8 hours a night. And their entire diet is just meat and fresh fruit. What does that person look like?
I'm going to guess pretty fit, pretty healthy.
Shredded AF. They're looking like Jason Statham in the Meg 2 with his shirt off for the world to see. Fresh fruit not making you fat. That's not the issue. And it drives me nuts when you have these people who are like, well, the banana made me fat. Wasn't the pound of bacon that you had for breakfast?
Like you said, it wasn't the vodka and Coke that you had the other night. Yeah.
It wasn't not Coke, Joe. 4 liters of Coke.
Yeah.
What wasn't
the swamp water? Is that what we call it?
Yeah. When I was actually in the it was really funny. This is back in the days. I can't mention it because it will tank our engagement, but there was something going on where you had to wear a mask and it wasn't Halloween. How's that? Have I clued you in on what was happening? And I rolled into the gas station and someone proceeded to lecture me that I wasn't wearing the costume. I said, and I looked at them And I was taken aback, first of all, that you would, and anyway.
Yeah.
They had a bucket, like a bucket, 120 ounce bucket that they had filled up with soda. I'm in Utah, so it's at BYU on it. This is a big team here. And this is an adult. They were drinking it through a Twizzler's straw. I'm like, you're worried about, okay, I guess. And they weren't offended. I wasn't following the rules because I had forgotten and I just really needed to get some ice. It wasn't that I was like giving my middle finger to the management. It was like literally they were worried about my health. Yeah. The amount of grown people I see at this gas station, it's called the Maverick. It's like a 7-Eleven in Utah. The amount of people, Joe, I see eating Reese peanut butter cups for breakfast, Twizzlers, candy.
What are those little things that come on the rollers at the gas station? They're like a chorizo roll up. Like, those are healthy. Those are great if you're trying to cut weight.
A monster soda, some fried gordita thing, and a bag of Takis or Doritos, or what are the little crunch it's called with Chester the Cheetah on them?
Oh, Cheetos, right? Yeah.
The hard little crunchy ones. Like, that's really what you're an adult. You're a growing person, and that's what you're having. And so, our 10% would cure all of that person's ailments. Yeah. That's it. Like, it's just not. It's just so. Again,
I'm on here. I'm drinking a cappuccino. That's part of my 10%. That's whole milk and coffee, my friends.
Don't tell me the fruit's making you fat. Let's get over this. It was that soda.
And there is an answer. Well, what's the difference between a banana and like a candy bar? And there is an answer, and that's that the banana is a piece of fruit, which means it comes from a plant, which means all the sugar in that banana is behind a cell wall. Yeah. And it doesn't just dump directly into your stomach the way that raw sugar does. So your body does process it differently.
If we were on that island and we had like a little pet volleyball for a friend, what was that movie?
A pet volleyball. I love it.
I think his name was
Castaway. Yeah.
Okay. If I was on that island, I wouldn't feel bad about eating some coconut and some bananas and some papaya and some mango.
Yeah.
Wouldn't feel bad about it at all. So anyway, it's your episode of the Maximus Podcast. Hopefully you got a lot out of that. Listen, clean up your eating. It will make you better in every aspect of your life. And I'm talking across the board. You will lose weight. You will build muscle. You will have more energy. Your brain function will be better. Your sexual function will be better. You will be happier. There is a correlation between your health and how much money you will make, how resilient you are to stress. It is 100% worth it.
Yes.
Gave you all the instructions. You shouldn't have any further questions. If you're in doubt, if you're sitting down at a table and in your little heart you feel fear, you feel overwhelmed, you don't know what to eat, just ask yourself, is there a pizza tree? Is there a cracker tree? Is there a spaghetti tree? And all the answers will be revealed to you, and you are done. Tune in for the next episode, subscribe, click the notifications, make some comments to give us some engagement. That's how you're going to say thank you, because I didn't inundate you with all kinds of ads trying to pump my wares. Just make a comment, like, subscribe, notify, and be a better person.